Well, I think Trump is saying an awful lot of things at the moment and trying to achieve an effect. And we've just seen today that his talk and his desire that European countries spend more on their defence is having an immediate impact, with the British government just announcing increase to 2.6, then 2.7, then 3% of GDP on defence. So I think Trump is very much into big statements. He says he's transactional. He says he's great at doing deals. That's where it is. Obviously, the ultimate threat is World War III, which is the worst possible case outcome. But I think we're some way from that. I think it's more Trump trying to achieve effect. Well, whatever the ceasefire deal is going to be, we still don't know. And certainly, President Zelensky's been very hard over hitherto that they want to recover all the lands that have lost to Russia. And international law would say that he's absolutely right. The practicalities, one doesn't know. There undoubtedly will be some pro quo with the land that Ukraine holds in Kursk in Russia at the moment, but whether they can return back to 2014 borders, one doesn't know. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a deal in some degree, and whether Russia still holds some of Ukraine, I'm not sure that it will be hugely significant in that sort of respect. When it comes on to emboldening Putin, well, absolutely, this is why it's crucial that the European countries and US head them off to make sure that they can't be emboldened. But the critical element, if Putin did try and take some land from Estonia or Latvia or Lithuania, they are NATO countries, and that would trigger Article 5, where everybody piles in. Now, the Americans, or Trump is perhaps suggesting that the Americans might not, but with the rest of the European NATO countries piling in, who we know are militarily more than a match for Russia, that should be sufficient to deter Putin. The reason that he attacked Ukraine is because it wasn't a NATO country. And also, when he looked west, the conventional deterrence was not there from European countries, which is why today's commitment by the British government to increase defence spending, at the same time that the Germans are suggesting they're going to spend considerably more on defence, is very significant. And, I am more confident that things won't spill over now that Europe has woken up and we've woken up to the fact that actually defence is our number one priority and we can no longer pay lip service to it. Putin seems to have no limits at all. And, I'm talking to you from Salisbury, where, of course, his thugs, his Secret Service people tried to murder Sergei Skripal, the double agent with the deadly chemical weapon Novichok, and did, of course, kill a local Dawn Sturgis. He's also poisoned Alexei Litvinenko in this country with polonium, a radiological isotope. We've seen the atrocities he committed in Syria. I saw them personally. And we've seen the atrocities, the war crimes he has committed in Ukraine. So, yeah, I think there is very little limit to what it do. However, nuclear, I think, certainly if we look at chemical weapons like Novichok, yeah, he could go there. He's using a lot of low-level chemical weapons on an industrial scale every day in the Donbass. So he could escalate to more deadly ones. But I think the nuclear issue, I think he's blown his case on that. He and Peskov and Medvedev, his sort of deputies, have threatened us with nuclear attack virtually every day in the last 3 years, and nothing has happened because, it's an empty threat. And in a way, that's how nuclear deterrence works. The fact that the West and the East have parity in nuclear capability actually means that they can't be used. So Putin could well commit more atrocities and war crimes. The escalation beyond the sort of European theatre is something we must consider. But I suppose if we compartmentalize it, look at Iran. Well, what could Iran do? Well, it's not a nuclear power at the moment. It very much wants to be. Actually, Iran has been hammered by the Israelis. Their proxy groups, Hezbollah in particular, and to a lesser degree Hamas, have been pretty much destroyed. So that is what Iran would probably want to send to the battle, as it were. But they've gone, and its own military, conventional military, is pretty outdated and not really a concern. And actually, the Iran and Israel sort of keep themselves at bay, as it were. And the fact that Israel has nuclear weapons and Iran doesn't. So I don't think Iran could affect things greatly. North Korea, they're desperate for nuclear know-how to create a nuclear weapon. I mean, that's the biggest concern, I think, is, as Kim Jong-un gives so many thousands of his young men to be slaughtered on the front lines of the Donbass, what's he getting in return? Maybe it's nuclear technology, but apart from throwing more young North Koreans into the meat grinder, I don't think the military capability is hugely significant. And I suppose you look at the other great military power, China. I think China rather is keen to hover in the background like some great white shark waiting to devour bits as they fall off. And I don't think China would want to get involved in a spat. China is far more interested in its sort of economic development and developing, getting extra place for the vast population than getting involved in a war. So I think escalation is probably unlikely with those sort of people. And also, I think we've got to look at, the Russian army has been hammered. They if they are not there, they're very close to having 1 million casualties. I mean, the casualty rates, even yesterday, the British MOD was saying the Russians are losing 1,500 soldiers per day. I mean, it is just unbelievable. We understand they've lost 4,000 tanks. So actually, what the Russian army now is basically untrained conscripts forced to the front. And the only way they're staying in the battle is Putin has no concern about casualties. So they keep getting thrown in. So if push came to shove and there was a conventional fight, between European NATO countries and Russia, I think Europe would prevail not fairly easily, but would prevail. And you throw America into the mix and it wouldn't be an even fight at all. So things are finally judged at the moment. We've got Ukraine, who are absolutely caught in the middle, who have been so badly wronged. And we're hoping for a just peace settlement, ceasefire. So the Russians are kicked out and we can restore the world order. But unfortunately, there are lots of sort of competing ideas and thoughts at the moment.